Hey guys, Matt here, and welcome back to another low poly speed level design on the Matt-Fantastic Productions YouTube channel. So, you liked the previous level design video. So I'm gonna make another one, but only after a message from our sponsor, myself. I am on Fiverr now. On there I'm gonna make low poly art just like all these ones I've made for YouTube videos, but for your video games, so that your games can look just as good as mine. All starting for only $5. I'm also making video editing there, just like the edits in this video, so if you're interested, check the link in the video description and support the channel. So, back to the video. To begin the scene, I made some nature assets. Trees and rocks. So at first, I made an oak tree. To do that, I did the same thing I did for the tree trunk in the first episode. I used an edge with a skin modifier and a subdivision surface component to smooth it out. With that, I can use Ctrl A to control the thickness of every single edge in the tree. After that, I decimated the tree to make it look really low poly. I then polished it all up and started adding some roots. I then used the classic way to make low poly vegetation, which is to make some decimated blobs of mesh and just spreading them around the mesh and creating a tree this way. With that done, I moved on to a pine cone. Pine cones are really easy to do because they're basically a bunch of cones on top of each other. To do it, I first made a cylinder to work as the tree trunk and then started adding a bunch of cones on top of each other and rotating them a bit to give it a little bit of randomness. I then used the Boolean modifier on the Union preset to combine all of those cones into one big mesh. I then made the birch tree. The birch tree is very similar to the oak tree. I also use edges with a skin modifier and subdivision surface and then decimate it all. Just the leaves are a little bit different. The leaves in the birch trees are bigger blobs and they are extended vertically, but the rest is pretty much similar. I then made a tree trunk by basically adding a cylinder and putting some details on top of it. After that, I made some quick rock assets. I'm gonna tell you a big tip on how to make rocks. Just create a very subdivided icosphere and then go to sculpt mode and use the scrape tool to start flattening some surfaces. You go flattening every surface until all the surfaces around the stone are flat. Then you just decimate the stone to make it really low poly. And you got a very beautiful low poly rock. I then proceeded to do the biggest part of the scene, a wooden house that would be in the middle of the woods. So I started with a cube that I prolonged in one side and made a little pointy roof on it. I then added some tree trunks to the corner of the house to make it a little more 3D. I then proceeded to do the roof tiles. For the roof tiles, I basically just used the rain modifier to add a bunch of little cubes all around the roof. I then rotated some of those cubes randomly just to give it a little bit of randomness on the roof, and it ended up looking pretty good. I then just added some more details to the house. I proceeded to do a little balcony on the side of the house by adding some tree trunks to support the roof and some roof tiles to make the roof. And a little fence to cover the edge of the balcony and the little stairway going down and up from the balcony. I then added some windows and a front door. then added some wooden planks all around the wall to give it a little bit of a more 3D effect by giving it a little bit of that mesh prop up thingy. I then proceeded to do a bunch of little rocks that are gonna work as paths, and I also made a small barrel to stay on the house, and the house was done. I then attempted to do it all on Unity using the assets I had, but that didn't actually end up working. The terrain system on Unity doesn't really give me the detail I'd need. So I just ended up going back and making the whole terrain on Blender. So in the terrain, I quickly used the knife tool to create a river and some elevations in the terrain. I then added a plane to work as the water. That plane I would later use on Unity and put it as shader to make it wave and stuff. I flattened a part of the river shore to make it look like a little beach. I then proceeded to make a bridge that would cross that river. And then I just added some extra hills in the back of the terrain. I then added the rocks as paths that I created with the house, and added them to make a path leading from the house to the bridge. I then added a couple of logs piled up on the floor and a chopping board, because I suppose a lumberjack would live in that cabin. I then proceeded to add some pine trees all around the map. I ended up only using the pine tree and not the oak and the birch tree. I then went for the rocks and started spreading rocks all over the place. I then added some chopped logs around the chopping boards. I then proceeded to put it all on Unity. To start, I made a flat shaded shader, just because some objects for some reason weren't really getting flat shaded. Here's how you can make one yourself. I then grabbed the same shader that I used on the previous video and just adapted it to wave up and down instead of left and right. I then attempted to use a Fresnel effect to give it a little bit of detail on the edge of the water, but it didn't actually end up working. So I only did the water wave. By the way, for the tree and the grass waving shader, I used the same shader I used in the previous video. That shader used the UV's position to demand what's gonna wave and what's not gonna wave. So I just went back to Blender and used the project from view, UV and wrap to make sure that the top of the tree is on the top of the UV and the bottom of the tree trunk, is on the bottom of the UV. I then finished it all up by adding some grass. I then just added some post-processing. And it was all done. And look at it, it's so beautiful again. I love it. So that is the video, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe. And don't forget to check me out on Fiverr. It would really support the channel if you could hire me there. And I hope to see you all next week. Bye!